Welcome everyone to Unsheathed Sword Reviews. I'm Vic.
And I'm John.
And today we're reviewing the Niu Wei Dao by LK Chen. I am sure I completely butchered that, John. If I did, let me know. And also let me know, what the hell is this thing?
Well, this is a Chinese sword, and it is from the late Qing Dynasty, Q-U-I-N-G, I think that's how you pronounce that. The Qing Dynasty went from around the 1600s until around 1912, but this is from the late Qing Dynasty, so essentially this would have been from around the 1800s through the early 1900s. It's a civilian weapon, which is interesting because it was never issued to any imperial troops. It was purely for civilians, and it's obviously mainly geared towards cutting, but it does thrust pretty well as well.
John, you have a lot of swords.
Yes, I do.
This is my favorite sword that you own.
Which is, coincidental because you bought it for me for my birthday.
Yes, Scott and I bought this for him because, you know what, we're damn good friends, aren't we? And we support each other's bad habits. And
Absolutely.
So, yes, this was a recent birthday gift for John. Mm-hmm. And this might be a spoiler alert to my whole thoughts of this sword, but if you didn't own this, I would. So,
fair enough, yes.
This is a damn impressive looking sword. The single edge, the shape of it, all of that, it looks just amazing. And so you said this was a Dao, but we previously reviewed a different Dao by LK Chen that looked radically different than this.
That's right, the Yan Ling Dao from LK Chen also.
Which also looks badass, but like in a totally different way.
Right, and so it's interesting, there is a transition period in Chinese sword history where swords go from being essentially mostly straight to essentially mostly curved. And so this is the representation of the late period of a curved, what's called an oxtail saber, because you can see it's got a really nice sinuous curve that goes all the way through it. And then if you go back and you look at the review of the previous Dao, you can see that it was like stuck smack in the middle between a straight Dao from earlier and like Tang Dynasty and before to a curved sword like this. So it's kind of right in the middle. So it's neat. I always like pieces like this that represent a distinct period in history and like an evolution of sword development. And so I think this is a really good representation of that.
Yeah, I agree. And like, Chinese swords aren't necessarily my thing, but as a sword collector, you could just appreciate when something is awesome, for lack of a better term. So this costs you $318 and you get a lot of sword for that. The fit and finish on this is very well done. So $318, that puts you, like, if you were talking about a European sword, I would say that's budget.
That's budget realm. You're looking, like absolutely something like Devil's Edge or something, right?
Yeah, or even like, a better made Hanwei or Windlass or something like that.
Yep.
This to me feels very much like a mid-range sword in terms of its fit and finish comparatively. I think that the grip feels really good in your hands. The wrapping on it is really good. What is that? It's like
it's cord. It's like paracord.
Yeah. So that's very tight. It doesn't move around at all. It has that cup guard that these style of swords have, and like that's right and tight. This sword has an insane amount of distal taper, but the blade itself, you can get two different blade options with this, right?
Yeah, it comes in two different steel types. They have basically the Chinese version of 5160, which is like a carbon manganese steel blend. So you can get it in mono steel with that, or you can get it pattern welded steel, which is what I have here. And I really like the pattern welded steel because of how wide the blade is. It really accentuates the pattern and it looks really pretty. But I don't think you could go wrong either way. I think they're both pretty great.
Definitely. And you have the this kind of pattern on your white arc also.
Yeah.
And that looks really cool, but you're right, because this is so wide, you just can see it more.
Yeah, you have to really kind of look closely at the white arc because it's such a narrow giant blade. So yeah, although sharp.
As you found out, spoiler. Yeah. But yeah, so this sword overall, its aesthetics, it looks amazing. The fit and finish I think is very, very good, especially considering the price. I think the fit and finish is better than probably it needs to be for this price points.
I agree, and I want to talk about that a little bit because in general, this isn't the sort of aesthetic that you prefer. Because it is LK Chen. They do what they do very well, and mostly what they do is they do a very utilitarian fit and finish that focuses on the handling, not so much on the aesthetics, but it does have a sort of utilitarian simplicity to the aesthetic, which I think looks really good. So I think that if you like that, for example, like if you look at like an Albion sword or something, it's obviously a much more refined aesthetic than this is, and that's fine. It's just a different look. But another thing to mention with this sword is when I got it, unfortunately, I had a quality control issue with it, and the disc guard here was loose on the one that I got, and it was like tink, 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 and you could hear it tinking every time you would move it. So I contacted LK Chen about it, and we've bought a few swords from them now, so they kind of know who we are, but I don't think that impacted the way they dealt with it, because I've never experienced customer service this good before. They literally sent me a new sword before I even mailed out the old one.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And so they're like, we want to make this right. We're going to take care of it. The gentleman that does their cut, or I assume it's a man, is KK, is how he signs his emails. And I get a response back within 5 minutes every time I email him, even though China's on a completely different time zone than we are. And like I said, they sent me a new sword before I even mailed them this one back. So
that's impressive.
I don't think you can beat that.
No, and so fit and finish issues happen. They happen with Albions sometimes. And I think what speaks to how good a company is how quickly they handle that and how right they make it. And Absolutely. They made this as right as they could. They sent you a new sword.
They sent me a new sword immediately. I mean, and now contrast that with some other makers that we've dealt with who have been basically, oh, you have rust on your sword and there's epoxy coming out of the top? Dark sword. Yeah. I guess that's your problem. You'll have to fix it and dye it.
Excuse you, John. He meant dark sword. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine, isn't it? Watch our reviews. So, okay. Yes, this is fantastic. I think the fit and finish on this is incredible. The fit and finish, coincidentally, on the Scabbard is also really cool. And that's a unique Scabbard that you should definitely talk about, John.
I completely agree. And through the magic of editing, we are going to make it a prettier like this. So, as you see, it is a very, very nice Scabbard. It's heavy. Okay, it's very much in keeping with the lines of the piece. It's got hangers here, so you can attach it to like a frog clip on your belt. It's very well made, and the wood. This is a standard thing with LK Chen in general. Their scabbards are nicer than they need to be by a lot, and this I think continues that. It's got, I don't know if it's called a chape on a Chinese sword scabbard, but I'm going to call it a chape. It's got this really intricate, very sort of traditionally Chinese looking carving on it. It's got nice copper pins here that anchor this piece where you hang it to your frog. I think it's a great looking scabbard, and it's heavy and it feels very well made. It feels like a premium item. Like if this came on an $800 or $1,000 sword, I'd be like, okay, that's the scabbard I would expect for a $1,000 sword. Does
this handle as good as it should for how it looks?
I can't overstate how this sword handles. It's like swinging a lightsaber around. It's light, it's fast, and it's the factory edge that came on it, and it's not even that sharp, but it's still, just because of the unbelievable edge geometry in this thing, like literally there's no secondary bevel whatsoever. You go directly from the spine of the blade to the edge of the blade. It may be a micro bevel, but it's just, the sword is so well designed that it doesn't even have to be that sharp, and you'll see when we do cuts, it's like a lightsaber.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said. And yeah, so like a lot of that is the design. A lot of that with how agile it is the Distal Taper.
Yep.
And back to that design, part of the reason why this is such a good cutter is, it starts off really, really thick at the base and has a crazy amount of Distal Taper. So at this point, kind of like the sweet spot of where you want to cut, the blade itself is really, really thin, but then it bellies out and gets really wide. So really thin, really wide is a great recipe for a good cutter.
Amazing cutter.
And that is like exactly what this is designed to do. On that note, though, still an effective thruster.
Way better than you would expect it to be in terms of thrusting. It's really a great all-around sword.
So John has mostly Chinese swords, I think.
Mostly Chinese swords. Yep.
And a variety of different types of Chinese swords, and they're all fun and unique and for their own reasons. This though, like just from an aesthetic standpoint, like I said, is my favorite of your swords. It's also probably the funnest for me to swing around. This feels the most kind of like a medieval army sword and or falchion, but it's just so fun and easy. So like as somebody who's used to medieval swords, you can pick this up and have an idea of how to use it right away. And then it will just blow your socks off with how good it is.
That's absolutely true. And honestly, I think both this and the other Dao that I have from LK Chen, you could probably take those blades and put them on a messer or a falchion blade, and probably nobody would even look at you funny.
Yeah, put this on a cruciform hilt and you just have a really wicked falchion.
Exactly, yep, for sure. Absolutely. So it's the same purpose. It's a designated cutter that thrusts better than you'd expect, and it just performs like it's unbelievable.
It performs better than a $318 sword should.
Yeah, by any means. It performs better than a $700 sword should,
with
I think.
A fit and finish that is better than it should be, and a great scabbard. To me, this is an insane value.
I completely agree. And I think this just goes, if you watch our videos, there's a pretty common theme that we talk about with LK Chen, is that it's a sort of a reductionist aesthetic. So if that's not your thing, I get that. But beyond that, it is, I think, the best value for your money in the sword market that there is. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we haven't really said a whole lot of negative things about LK Chen. And just so you know, we are not by any means a big enough YouTube channel to where we're getting free review samples. So this is completely unbiased.
Exactly. This is just our money that we've spent, and this is how we feel about it value-wise. I don't know that you do better than LK Chen in this market.
Yeah, we just really, really like the products that they're putting out. And like from a Chinese standpoint, now that we have a couple European swords, like they're just making really quality pieces at an unbelievably low price.
Absolutely.
100%. So yeah, I completely recommend this.
get one immediately. And also, it's worth noting that when you get it from Kult of Athena, which is available on right now for the $318 price, you only get the choice of the mono steel. Whereas when you order from LK Chen direct, you get the choice of the mono steel or the pattern welded. Unfortunately, it's more expensive to get it shipped, and it's going to take longer. So it's you get to put a value on that for yourself.
That's very much still worth it to me.
Agreed.
So I think you get an amazing sword for that. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Just get one.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Unsheathed Sword Reviews. Go ahead and check out all the reviews that we have on the channel. And yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks.
Peace.